This video was recorded with the Avermedia Live Gamer Portable. Skip it up and that up! Oh, Gotta Blades for iOS and Android. How I want to love you, but can't. I like you a lot, and the gameplay is awesome. As you see, it's like an old school 2D action side-scroller. Kind of reminds me of something you would see on the Sega Genesis back in the days. The gameplay is fun when it works right, but the problem is there's a lot of frame rate and technical issues with this game. It gets very choppy, freezes up randomly for no reason. It doesn't lock up, but it'll just like freeze cold, stop cold for like 5 seconds and then start going again. I mean, it's only a 2.5D side-scroller. I mean, my tablet is not the top-end tablet in the world, but it's a Tegra 3 tablet, which although Tegra 3 is dated now, it's still capable, and I could play a hell of a lot more demanding games on my tablet than this. So, I don't know, it's on iOS too. I haven't tried it on iOS. I tried it on multiple Android devices, and all of them seem to have the same issue. So if you have Gotta Blades for iOS, tell me how it runs, if it runs smooth. Because if it does, this is a fantastic game. But for Android users, I could at least speak for you guys. It's cheap. See, it's freezing right there. It's cheap, but I don't know. It just, the technical issues really piss me off, and hopefully they make an update for this, because it is a fun game when it works right. So although this is an old article, it's still very relevant because it's constantly talked about on forums and on YouTube. Clock speeds for processors aren't everything. This video shout out goes to YouTube user Global Gaming 101. I'll have a link to his channel below in the description. And Chief Technical Officer for Avalanche Studios Linus Blomberg speaks about the clock speeds of the processors in both the Xbox One and PS4. This is what he had to say, and we all know that the Wii U, because it has a very low clock speed, received a lot of crap from people because they said, oh, it's so slow, how could it compete? So on and so forth. But this is what he had to say about clock speed when it comes to next-gen processors. Clock speed isn't really a very good measurement of performance. Modern processors are capable of processing much more data than last-gen processors, even at lower clock speeds. Lower clock speeds also have the benefit of consuming less power and producing less heat, meaning that the hardware can be more silent. What matters is the number of processors available, and luckily the PS3 forced developers to become much better at utilizing parallel processing power. Talk about a crash course. He was also asked if the PS4 will have a technical advantage, because even though both systems have 8 gigabytes of RAM, the PS4 is only going to use 1 gigabyte for its operating system, and the Xbox One is going to use 3 gigabytes for its multiple operating systems, and he was asked if that's going to be an advantage for the PS4 in the future, and this is what he had to say. I think it's too early to say. Naturally, it's easier and cheaper for developers to develop for the smallest common denominator, but if that difference becomes too large, we'll definitely see specific implementations for each platform, i.e. maybe 4 years from now we'll see a multi-platform game run at 60 frames per second on the PS4, and maybe it'll only run 30 frames per second on the Xbox One. It's not definite that's going to happen, but it's a possibility. Who knows? The reason why I wanted to talk about this article, because I see on the internet people are thinking, oh, I hear the PS4 and Xbox One are only running at 1.6 gigahertz. I hear some rumors they're 2 gigahertz too, or the Xbox One may have been downclocked, and whatever. They're a lower clock speed than the 7th gen consoles, and people think that means they're going to be slower performance or lower performance, and that's not the case. You know, it was funny, I used to work for HP, and I used to visit different stores, and people used to see, you know, there would be like a dual core Pentium machine, laptop or desktop or whatever, and then there would be a quad core, you know, Core i5 desktop or an i7, but one would be at a lower clock speed and one would be at a faster clock speed, and the dual core would have the faster clock speed. They'd be like, hey, isn't this a faster machine? And I'm like, no, it isn't just about that. You know, you have a quad, you have the Core i7 here, and even though it's a lower clock speed, because it has 4 cores and on top of it it's hyper-threaded, that means it could do 8 different things at once, whereas that dual core machine can only do 2 different things at once. So even though it's faster, quote unquote, because it's running at like 3 gigahertz as opposed to 2.4, the i7's running at 2.4, it doesn't mean it's more efficient. It doesn't mean it's faster. That's not how it works. And that's the same with these next gen consoles. You know, you're running it at a lower clock speed, fine, than the current gen, but you have 8 cores that can handle 8 different tasks at once. So they're going to be faster. It's a newer architecture. And even though the clock speed is lower on the next gen systems, you can't even compare them. It's like comparing apples and oranges. There's no way, even though the processors may only be 1.6 gigahertz, that you could compare a 2013 8-core processor to the Xbox 360's triple-core processor that was from 2005. It's night and day, the difference, and the performance difference is going to be huge. Also, too, they were looking for a lot of performance in a small package, and that's another reason why the clock speed is much lower on the next-gen consoles, because they don't want to worry about heating issues, period. And if you lower the clock speed, the processor produces less heat and less chance of overheating. That's why the PS4 is so small. It doesn't need a lot of space to cool off that 8-core CPU. So the bottom line is, if you see people bitching in forums about the next-gen consoles having slow processors, just tell them that clock speed, to a degree, means shit, and tell them to sit in a corner and be quiet. Anyway, folks, make sure to rate, comment, favorite, and subscribe. And if you have an interesting news story you would like me to discuss, private message me with a link via YouTube. And if I use your news article, I will give you a shout out in the video and feature your YouTube channel in the description. Have a good one.